So we have about an hour to do next steps. I'm just kidding. I know everybody's really tired. One of my favorite cartoonists is Gary Larson. How many people remember the one in the classroom where the kid raises his hand and he goes, "Mr. Jones, might you please be excused? My brain is full." Yeah, I'm sure you feel like that. So we've actually heard a fair amount about next steps. We just wanted to spend a couple minutes hearing from you. Just if you had to prioritize one next thing that this group could move forward, just one thing, what would it be based on all that you heard the last day and a half? Yeah, John and then Rick.
I had a little thought yesterday. It's sort of self-interested on our topic, but was looking at the arrow, right, and thinking about us as innovators. We, of course, are located out at the front of the spear there, and that's where interprofessionalism, social determinants, we're sort of looking globally and kind of moving it back into the system from there. This area that of health and well-being is actually, it's deep inside of our people. They're calling out for something different. It's different than with these other two things. It's a big issue that's there, and it occurred to me that that's obviously a case to sell the topic a little bit more, but it serves us to look. It's like it's low-hanging fruit. Our people are asking for it, whereas when these things, we're actually kind of moving things back into them. So that's the point.
Rick.
I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but the one concern I've had for the history of the forum, and this brings it home, is that our mission here, there probably has never been more brain power, myself excluded, gathered, except at the CERN convention on particle physics that was held a couple of years ago. And yet we don't seem to be able to take action. McGregor Burns, in his Pulitzer Prize winning book on leadership, said, "No change, no leadership." And the great report that we had about the dissemination of our information was fantastic, but that's dissemination. That's not necessarily a measure of outcome measures or change that's occurring as a consequence of your all's great work. And so I guess what I'm asking is whether or not there is a mechanism to stay within the principles of the now NOM, the old IOM, and not petition for specific action, which I think is the guiding light, but somehow that the leadership, you all could say, how can we take, because the group here represents opinion leaders across this country. I mean, I overhear your conversations. Oh, I was in Europe and I was influencing the 18 countries the other day. Oh, well, I was home playing golf.
That wasn't me.
But my handicap. Yeah. So do you understand the point is I wish that we could have a conversation about how to harness all of the leadership and influence truly, because it's amorphous out there if we don't do that.
Yeah, please, Marilyn.
So I couldn't agree with you more, Rick. And I know we've had conversations with Malcolm about all this too, the need to move with great speed. The healthcare delivery system and healthcare is moving so fast. As I listened to the presentations this morning, I kept thinking the processes of speed, the speed by which curricula change, and the speed at which we have to change in healthcare. I mean, when Ebola came, we had to mobilize really fast, and command centers and education and continuing ed, and just in ways to document it. How can you keep that kind of speed occur with health professions education or what we're doing? So going to a more pertinent point, within the guidelines of the national academies, couldn't there be some way for us to have an action blueprint that we could then make side agreements over the wine or the whiskey, depending on which one, of the action? Because you're right, we have such incredible brain power and influence power in this room. The disciplines that are in this room are incredible, that we could just, at this meeting, create the change. So I was sharing with Malcolm and Susan at the break. Kaiser Permanente has had 5 years of a conference that we call B3, breaking the silos, bridging the gap, building the future. Couldn't we do something like that with an action blueprint that we could, as part of this, each of us take one action? I mean, that's the other thing, small habits or tiny habits. One action that we could take to move toward that action blueprint. So, Patricia, couldn't we do something like that? Or Patrick's not here. But I mean, we do have to harness the energy, and I feel that strongly, because how long, we can't wait another 50 years, as we've said. What could we do to make it go faster? Susan.
So if I could just say one thing, I don't think there's anything precluding us from continuing this conversation outside of the NAM, if I'm not mistaken. So we do have some power to continue to convene this group. We don't necessarily have to do it here. Am I correct in that, Patricia? Yeah. So I think sometimes we look to others to, we're sitting in here. So if we feel that strongly about it, we as a collective group can say we're us. And there are some receptor sites based on the organization you work with and others that might be a place to start. I just bring that up. We don't necessarily have to bring it back here. We could take it somewhere else. Yeah, Susan, please.
Well, Malcolm and Patricia and I have had the similar conversations with many of you, and we couldn't agree more. Actually, action blueprint is a good word because it doesn't say recommendation. One of the things we've talked about is taking the work of the last 3 days, including the cards that people left on the table at dinner, and synthesizing a bit and seeing what emerges in terms of what we might call an action blueprint, and certainly some topics and ideas for continuing to move this forward. So we will be doing that. But I couldn't agree more with the sense of urgency. And you're right. We have we have Ebola still really out there as a threat, but now we have other things like Zika virus. We have the heroin epidemic. I mean, we have to move faster than the threats that we're facing, frankly.
Patricia, and then, sorry, forget your name. Judith. Thank you. Drew blank.
Yeah, I was wanting to say exactly what you were saying, and it's really both and. So what is it that we can do within this group? And then what is it that we can do on the outside? And I just want us to come back, and I don't want to put John on the spot, but, where is it that we also think about some external funders that are interested, like, for example, in the health and well-being piece of this? And then why don't we think about all the different segments? I agree 100% with what Malcolm said earlier, and shows both of our age. He's a little bit grayer than I am, but but we have been looking at so many of these things for years and years and years, and it's not like that a lot of any of this is really that new. And so it is about what are we going to do with it instead of talk about it. And I didn't mean that.
Are you
in a
saying
negative
Malcolm
way.
is Bill Murray in Groundhog Day?
Well, when God said go light, I decided to work again with him instead of against him.
Judith.
Just wanted to highlight one piece that was particularly meaningful to me was looking at it as a system, the education, practice, accreditation, linkage, and keeping that kind of prominent in the discussions as it's moved forward in whatever way, and always asking, who should be at the table and representing across the system. So I just wanted to bring that piece up.
Yep, go ahead, Malcolm. I'm going to confuse
I don't know much about the accreditation community, but you folks and folks in the room know a lot more. But thinking of outside conveners, the associations that actually represent a broad swath of accreditors, since the subject is sort of the role of accreditation, not that that's the only important subject, but it's certainly one of the important ones. I would just suggest that those organizations, some of which may be represented here today, think seriously about some of the convening issues, because you know, for a workshop at the National Academy of Medicine, we can't issue recommendations. So maybe this blueprint for action is some way around it. Maybe it isn't, I don't know. But other organizations can. And I think I would hate to lose the richness of the last couple of days. And there are other organizations out there, and there's some foundations that I suspect might be interested in funding some of that work.
Neil, any words?
No, I would just agree, but maybe with some of the associations like ASPA could be a starting point, but going back to Judith's point about who the stakeholders that need to be at the table, and one of the pieces is that end piece, so getting to the clinical environment and getting representatives from there. It would have to be expanded beyond that to get all those correct stakeholders at the table.
It's called an invitation to relevant stakeholders.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, on behalf of Neil and myself, thank you very much for a very productive day and a half. Travel safely and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.